Welcome. Good afternoon. I'm Brian Jepson with Make. I'm a book editor for Make. I work on some of the books about electronics and 3D printing and other fun stuff. But here we're going to talk a little bit about 3D printing, but also mostly about the design of things that goes into it. I'm here with Wayne Losey of Dynamo Development Labs. Is that right?
Well,
I got that right?
That's right.
But also known as the guy behind Mbot. Mbot was a successful Kickstarter project in which you offered backers some pretty cool toys.
Yes.
And before we get into why this talk is called The Toy Maker, let's talk about what Wayne's made recently. Why don't we go with the Modibots, and then you can talk a little bit about the guy in the middle.
Sure. So what Modibot is it's a character build system of over 500 parts right now. At the center of the build system is a molded chassis, just like any other construction style kit. This started out as fully 3D printed. So right now the Modibot system has over 500 different parts. Most of those are available, actually they're all available as 3D printed. So his figure even started out that way. What Brian was talking about, the Kickstarter, was to pay for a molded figure. And the reason that we did that was because it actually gives you a lot more control. We were able to bring our price down, give a little bit more of a consistent play experience, and a really good chassis for all the 3D printed stuff to snap to. So what's great about it is all the pieces interact both ways. So all the regular molded pieces are all interconnective with what you see here. The white pieces are 3D printed.
Dare you show us how they go together here?
Sure. So it's all ball and sockets. Fairly easy to put together. They all slide in. They're all interchangeable, so all the balls and sockets are the same size. So you can sort of mix these together if you wanted to make a guy with 4 arms, or you wanted to turn him into a spider or anything else. But he has belts and tails and all kinds of different stuff. Vice grip arms. Vice grip arms that you can add to them. There's dinosaur kits that you can build full dinosaurs. We have an angel kit with some really nice feathered wings that will be available pretty soon. So the idea is to give kids a really wide variety of visual textures that they can build from, so they can kind of create their own action figures instead of just taking what they buy in a package somewhere.
Do you have any plans to let people create their own designs and make their own accessories?
Definitely. The how to go about doing that is sort of a harder to answer questions. A lot of 3D modeling programs are still difficult for kids maybe below 7, which is a typical action figure age, between 5 and 7. So, but as companies like Autodesk create their 1-2-3 suites, 1-2-3 design suites, they're actually starting to make it a lot more accessible for kids to do the 3D modeling part of this. What I see in the future, this might be as early as 6 months or 2 years from now, is that kids can go in there, choose a part, and then maybe modify the part or put a socket into a part themselves, so that they're bringing in a scan of an apple that they have and adding sockets to it.
Now, let's talk about this fellow over here. You recently were recruited, I think by me, to help out with
I don't remember who it was.
Yeah, you don't remember who, no. Yeah. He's a smooth talker. To help out with a project that we're doing with Brian David Johnson, who spoke here a couple times yesterday about social robots, and we needed a designer to take the 2D drawings, the 2D artworks of a robot named Jimmy, and take the first step into making him a real robot, which is to come up with an exoskeleton. Now, over in the Make booth, you can see a full-size Jimmy that's 2 feet, but you decided that you'd do a Modibot version of Jimmy.
Right.
And this is the result. This was printed at Shapeways on a 3D printer that used is that the type of printer they have on display in the booth? I mean,
it is. It's a Formiga nylon printer. The material is called polyamide, and it's a very dense, more manufacturing-based style of 3D printing than you see from a lot of the hobby printers that you see. So the part integrity is very much almost as if you had it molded. So it's pretty high. The ball and sockets are very durable.
Now, this talk's called the Toy Maker.
Yes.
Now, you've been a toy maker for a long time.
20 years.
20 years. And at one point in your career, you were heading up the Star Wars line.
Yes.
Right. He's not old enough to have headed up Star Wars starting with Episode 4. So.
No, but I liked it a lot back then.
So we don't want to make him seem like he's, 20 years older?
I'm not that old. Yeah, I'm not 50.
You probably were playing with those toys.
Yes, I was.
Yes.
1977, 1978.
Yeah, but so you worked first at Kenner, and then
I started at Kenner in 1993, and that was before Star Wars started coming back. In about 1997, they started producing Star Wars action figures again, and then leading up to that were the next trilogy, Episode 1 through 3.
So what I'm curious about is, now you work in a studio with a CAD modeling tool, and you either send it out to Shapeways to get printed, or sometimes you do prototyping on well, certainly with Jimmy,
yep.
You did some, you did printing the large scale one on a replicator too, and did the prototyping on a Mbot Plus.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
How has that making toys changed? I imagine that the big toy companies might maybe still do things the way they did before, but were they using CAD packages when you were doing Star Wars? Were they sculpting by hand? What did it look like?
So
I never asked you this. Let's hear it.
No, but it's good because Star Wars is a good example. So Star Wars is a scale, like a 3 3/4 inch scale, and as technology has improved, it's made it very difficult. It's one of the last scales that has been able to switch over to digital because of the output. So when you print something, the output really determines how good of a likeness you can get. We've been using digital in toys for more than 15 years, longer, closer to 20. So we were using it not long after I started.
So you use
prototyping wise.
Yep.
So the thing is we were using SLS, and we were building in things like Pro-E, so engineering suites, SolidWorks, not as much in Rhino, but some of our outside vendors would work that way. So we've been using 3D printing as a tool for a long time. In 1998, I went to Sydney, Australia, where they were filming Star Wars Episode 2, and did 3D scans of all the actors, all the props, the lightsabers, the masks, the large-scale vehicles. We did laser scanning of all that stuff. When we got it back,
I'm guessing we can't have those scans.
No, and I don't have those scans now either.
I had to try.
But one of the big challenges was that there was no way to output the great information that we got. We had all these scans. We had like everybody making different facial gestures, and we just had so much information. But because we couldn't output it, there was nothing that would print it essentially to the degree that would allow us to use it.
So would these scans just go back to the office and an artist would look at them?
Well, a lot of times we would use them to start from. But the funny thing about toys, we've sort of gotten used to, in the past 10 years, toys look a little bit more like a real likeness, like real people right now. But even 15 years ago, they look like caricatures. So making a great toy and making a toy look like somebody is actually more a function of making it a caricature of them. Because if it looks too much like them, realistic, it doesn't look like a toy anymore. So you're always trying to fight that balance of how real versus how gestural or stylized or whatever.
Now, what is it? You're not in the toy industry anymore, and I think you're maybe trying to change the toy industry because you're doing something different. You're not doing this for a company. No. This is just you. Right. So what's the plan here? Do you have a plan?
Well, like a lot of ideas, I have a loose plan. It's an organic plan. But part of what I see that the opportunity in working in 3D printing is not necessarily outputting each item. What I think the future is going to be, like if you look at delivery systems like books and magazines and music now, they're all driven by files. And what's changing is now you can actually deliver files, digital files, but you need to be able to print them locally. So the idea in the future is that companies aren't going to make 60,000 of Captain action figures and then try to talk people into selling them. They're going to be made one at a time. So those files will just be sitting there, and you're not going to spend so much money up front making all these steel molds, shipping them halfway across the world. And when you talk about a real sustainable business, it's really going to change over the next 10 years. So it's really going to be more of a digital paradigm like you see with a Nook or a Kindle or something or an iPod. The difference is going to be, instead of you walking around listening to something, you're going to either print it at home or you're going to go down the street to Walgreens and have a print picked up there. And it's just going to change how products are made and developed and delivered.
Could you ever see a scenario where you might make the chassis available for free, maybe even open source download, and then you sell the accessories?
There's going to be some sort of free model in the future. I think part of the trick is defining how to do that. Like, which parts do I offer for free? One thing, I could sit and say, oh, I'm going to offer the figures for free, and then I'm going to charge for the accessories. Or I could say that all of my designs have a shelf life, and I'm going to charge for the first year of the life of every model, and then I'm going to retire it to free or something like that. So I think we're still in some strange times here. Is like, as a content creator, like there's not many big companies in the world that would go, oh, I'm just going to give everything away for free, right? So you have to figure out, is like, what do you offer for free? Sort of like apps. A lot of them are free to download, and then you pay for extras. So I'm trying to figure that out right now.
Thanks. So we've got some time left. Why don't we take some questions? Anybody have questions for the toy maker?
Anyone? Everybody plays with toys.
Would a consumer buy a USB thumb drive with a file on it and then have the right to make one toy themselves or something?
So the question is, would a consumer buy a USB thumb drive, for example, with models on it, and then have the right to make 1, 2, 3, 4 models of it?
Well, I'm actually selling models right now, sort of as an experiment. So you can go and buy Mbot models.
On 3D Burrito, right?
On 3D Burrito, but if you just go to print.mbot.com, you can actually buy some through Gumroad. So but the thing is you just buy that file set right now. There's no way for me to track how many you print. It's all a digital delivery system. So in some ways, it's just, what I hope is that you're not going to just put it on BitTorrent tomorrow so everybody can get it or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, this is a way for me to experiment with that idea. There are companies that are essentially making ways that you could that they would stream to your printer only the code, so you would never have the file itself, but you could use that G code to print, 5, 6, 7, whatever number I would determine for you. So that's sort of the in-between step. I think it would be a little clumsy. I think it would be beside the point for me to give you a thumb drive with it on there.
You make toys out of metal? You print metal?
Can you print toys out of metal?
All of the files that are up on Shapeways, you could print in metal. I don't have it selected so that you can print them in metal.
So you could override it?
No, I would have to override it for you. But the only reason they're not available in metal is because metal, these are ball and socket joints, and that socket needs to flex. If I was doing something else that didn't require a flexible joint, then I would offer it in metal, and you could order it from Shapeways on there. So I might try to design metal toys that don't have that requirement in the future.
The biggest toy you can make?
The biggest toy you can make. Oh, you've got one in your booth. That's pretty big.
Well, and we just printed a Jimmy at Shapeways also.
2 feet.
That was 2 feet tall. So it has to be built-in parts.
20 parts, right?
It's 20 parts. But I just did the experiment with Brian. We built a printable model that's 20 parts that were printable on a MakerBot. So the Jimmy that I just finished is printable in scale.
Did you
in parts on a Rep 2?
Did you keep track of how many hours that took? A lot, right? I mean, like these.
I could probably go back into the log. On the
your
computer
prints
and see.
were like each
it
part.
was a lot. It was more than 2 weeks solid of printing. The biggest parts actually took 20 hours to print, and there were 6 of those, chests and head halves and all that. I mean, they were sizable parts. They used the whole print bed, essentially. But, the thing is since he's made in parts, I don't know. I could maybe make one at 6 feet. I don't know. I would just have to cut it down into parts that were printable.
Well, the Replicator 2 can print something about the size of a loaf of bread, but because he's printing it in parts, he can go as big as he wants.
But the ones I got at Shapeways, they have huge industrial printers, and the largest size on that I think is 650 millimeters square. So that's 3 feet by 3 feet, or 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet, cubed or whatever, I think.
Yep.
Are you guys getting that feedback out there also?
Getting into it. Any more questions? We have a little bit more time. Yes. Yeah.
It takes a lot more time to do what you're not consistently keep going.
Right, there's architectural printers. They're using that in architecture, right, to 3D print. So under that, you can make a toy as big as the Trojan horse. It doesn't. Yeah, I mean the file sizes. It's it's totally scalable. Once you have the file, you can make it whatever size is physically printable, I guess, right?
Yes, right down here.
Over the time you've been in the business, you've seen 3D printing become real. Do you foresee in the future that this will be like everyone now is an inkjet, where they used to have a dot matrix? Do you see 3D printing coming to a consumer, be it every day, for some function in the home? Do you see it in that direction?
Probably, and I think for me the big question is what technology makes it in. The FDM printers that we see, they're a little touchy. In the future you'd want to choose from multiple materials. So printers like Objets, you can load in different materials and print in rubberized materials and clears and all that. So whatever you had in your home you might want to have that capability. If you think about it now, not every home has a a photo quality printer at their house. It is like that. I go to Walgreens or something to get really nice prints if I'm giving them away to friends or something like that. But a lot of us have something that will do good enough with the right paper or whatever. And I think it'll be similar to that. I think it was it Dale Doherty that said he sees it sort of like an espresso maker. Not everybody has an espresso maker in their house, but the people that really use them sort of live around them. And I think that there's a good analogy there. Is like, it's not a day in and day out. We might not all have like a big printer in the corner of our house. What I think is interesting is how you get that print material. How does that bump up against recycling? So are you able to have a system that lets me recycle all my water bottles or something, or the packaging that comes into my house with paper pulp? Because there's 3D printers that use cut paper, right? The M-Core machine is really cool, and it's in color and made out of paper. So.
All right. Do we have time for a last question? Okay. Anybody else? So the question was, how do you protect yourself while you're creating the product and putting...
It seems like you have a scanner and anyone can pretty much go and remake your object.
Anybody with a scanner or a 3D printer could...
to some degree, it's not any different than if I was a book publisher. If I wrote like scientific papers or something, that's very hard for me to protect also. And I think you're at this point where I'm not sure that in the future copyright is going to be the most important thing. I think that big companies are going to hold on to that for a lot longer. But it's a strange thing to say, but I think the future of business is not in competition, it's in collaboration. And I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to see more things go open source, and you're going to see, like, one of the things that I keep thinking of, like, for me to give Mbot for free, I might have to go do a Creative Commons, share and share alike license or something like that is a loose form of a copyright. It's copyright with terms instead of just a raw do this, don't do this. And I think the future of law, especially when you get in this area, is going to be a lot more gray, and we're going to have to adjust for that, right?
All right. Well, Wayne, thanks a lot. Wayne Losey, everybody.
Thank you.
And you'll stick around to the side for a little bit, and people can also go check out Mbot closely at your space, right? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.